Magellan College Counseling, and I'm here with my colleague Michelle, who is based in Seattle. I'm based in Los Angeles, and our special guest today is Jasmine Bryan with the University of Utah. And she is here today to talk to us about the Western Undergraduate Exchange Program, which, if you live in the 14 Western United States, you have some special deals waiting for you for public universities in the West. So, Jasmine, why don't you give us some highlights of WUE, and then when Jasmine's done, we're going to go through some examples so you guys can figure out where to look up more information. So thank you for joining us, Jasmine.
Thank you, Evelyn. I'm really happy to be here today to talk to you about WUE. It's actually one of my favorite scholarships. I like scholarships that I get to give to lots of people, and that's the way it works with WUE. WUE tends to be a fairly accessible scholarship. So I'm going to share my screen. WUE stands for the Western Undergraduate Exchange, and in short, we call it WUE. So if you're wondering what we're talking about, it's WUE, the Western Undergraduate Exchange, and it's a regional tuition discount program. Students on WUE, instead of paying the out-of-state tuition, they pay 1.5 times the in-state tuition. So realize this is only applying to public schools because only public schools will have an in-state and an out-of-state tuition. If you are going to college in the same state, you're usually paying the in-state. But if you're looking at a college that's in a different state, you usually have to pay out-of-state. That out-of-state is usually quite a bit more than the in-state. So with WUE, you look at the in-state amount and you multiply by 1.5, and that is your WUE rate. And it's usually can be quite a savings for students. There are over 160 different schools that participate. It was founded in 1987. It's the largest program of its kind. And my favorite bullet is that last one. In 2019 to 2020, over 42,000 students saved over $408 million. So it's a lot of money, and it's a lot of students being helped by the program.
And
So,
just to clarify, what we're talking about is, and I love that you have the map up right now, we're talking about students from one state who, say, live in Oregon, going to school in Utah or going to school in Colorado. So what we're talking about is kids who live in all of these Western states staying in the West, which was the purpose of the program, but going to a different state, not obviously in their home state.
exactly. I think of it as these states decide to get together and give each other students a discount on that out-of-state tuition. It's not as good as in-state, but it's usually a lot better than the out-of-state.
But honestly, sometimes it is as good as in-state. And I've seen some instances because some of these public universities have such low tuition, I have actually seen it be less expensive than an in-state public
Yes.
university.
You're correcting me correctly. What I meant is it's not as good as that state's in-state,
Sure. Yeah.
but
Yep.
it could definitely be less than your own
And your
state
own. Crazy.
in-state. That is
Yeah.
very true. So there are the states, and then just going on, here's an example for at the University of Utah. Our in-state's about 10,000. Our out-of-state is about 33,000, and I always say most parents would rather pay this 15,000 than the out of state.
I'd love to have you point out again. So what we're talking about is the tuition that is the 1.5, the room and board and cost, other fees and things like that. Those remain the same regardless. Those are not discounted.
Exactly. It's just a discount on the tuition and not on the fees or room and board.
And the other thing I wanted to point out that your slide just showed was your out of state price. This is just for University of Utah, is about 3 times what your in-state tuition is. And that's a pretty standard sort of ratio, right? So
Yeah.
what that means is if WUE is 1.5 times in-state tuition, it means you're basically getting a 50% discount off of the out of state price.
Yes.
Different institutions within these states practice it differently, right? Not every university within a state participates in WUE. Is that correct?
Exactly. So a number of good points. And this is where we get into what I call the fine print. So some students will see Oregon on that map and get all excited and think, great, I can get WUE at University of Oregon. Unfortunately, they don't participate. There are other public schools within Oregon that do participate. So Oregon State University does participate, University of Oregon doesn't. So I usually suggest to students, go Google WUE, the Witchy Long URL's kind of complicated. I just Google WUE, WUE. I go to their site. They have a nice finder, but you can
Yeah.
see the schools that participate. That's a great way to start. Then once you're ready to get to the nitty gritty, go to each college's website to learn more about the requirements, because it is true, we each set our own requirements.
Right.
So I was on the WICHE page, which is Western Interstate Commission for Higher Education, but you're absolutely right. If you can't remember that, just Google WUE. That's it. And I promise you it'll come up. And it's called the Tuition Savings Finder. This is really where you want to start. With the savings finder, and what you can do is kind of narrow it down by state. That's what I like to do. You can narrow it down by other things, which Michelle, I think we were going to get into. Some schools don't participate for every major, right? So some schools have a WUE discount for some majors, but not all of them. So if you want to narrow it down by major, again, what I like to do, so Arizona is a perfect example. I'm just clicking Arizona, right? I live in California, so I want to find schools that have a discount on bachelor's degrees that are inside Arizona. And here's what you're going to find. Northern Arizona, I'm going to click on C programs. It's basically every major, right? So if you go to NAU from any of those Western states, you can get the WUE rate for every single major. But if you go down to Arizona State, the
University of
downtown
Arizona.
or University of Arizona, right? Even better. So there's literally only 2 majors that you can get the WUE rate.
I do want to point out that there are a couple of very special majors that sometimes are not included in WUE, and it's an important question. If you're a nursing major, it's not always included. Jasmine, is there another one that's like that?
I frequently get asked about nursing, but you don't give it for nursing. Actually, at the U, we do give it for nursing. We do not exclude any majors, but that is a good question. Each college, and that's why I do like on this site how you can just click that C programs and just see they will list the ones that do get it.
Yeah.
I think University of Arizona is probably the one that excludes the most. It's just for 2.
And honestly, I mean, I'm looking here. We've got the Polytechnic campus, which is not the main Tucson campus. We've got downtown, which is where the Cronkite School is, but you can see it's not here, right? There's no communications or journalism on here. So Arizona State honestly is limited as far as what their WUE rates are. What I also like to do, again, we mentioned University of Oregon does not participate, but Oregon State does. However, and they're not limited by major. However, it's competitive, which means there is a threshold, right? It says limited number of qualifying students, and you can see that they're not telling you what it takes to qualify. So you just have to, I mean, you could ask the scholarship office, they're giving you their information here, or you could call and say, what do I need to have to get the WUE scholarship? As opposed to the University of Utah, where Jasmine works. If you just Google University of Utah WUE, they're telling you right here, how does WUE work for incoming freshmen? Here's what you have to have. You have to have a 3.3 or higher. Now, interesting, Jasmine, it says at the time of admission. So and you have to submit by December 1, does that mean that I have to have a 3.3 by the end of junior year cumulative?
Exactly. So I get asked this a lot. And I said, well, what if my fall grades would bring me up? And say,
Right.
unfortunately, it's that you have to have it by December 1st. So we're not considering any of your senior year.
And Jasmine, I have a follow-up question. You really aren't considering the senior year, because I have lots of students panicked come November, December, and they are worried about their very, very rigorous senior year course load and their WUE scholarship. And they're wondering if by some reason their end of year senior grades dip below or lower than when they were originally awarded, if that WUE scholarship will be rescinded.
So each college could set their own policy. Once we award a scholarship from a high school, we're not going to take it away if it dips. Now, that does bring up another issue, which is keeping your scholarship once you are at that institution. So each school can do it differently. I previously worked at the University of New Mexico, and they reviewed it every semester.
Wow.
So they would look at the end of the semester, but you could appeal. There was an appeals process and you could work to raise your GPA and get it back. At the University of Utah, we don't look until the end of your freshman year, but if you lose it, you cannot get it back.
Oh,
So
so you
that's an example where how each college does it, it can vary on the school. And those are, again, good questions to speak with someone in admissions or financial aid to add, or look on their websites and see what their policies are, but they can vary.
So for example, at Oregon State University, it's a competitive scholarship. And if I was a student interested in that scholarship, I might call and say, about how many WUE scholarships do you award a year? And last year, what was your range that you were looking for? And what are you expecting this year? I would also ask things like, if there is a cap major, or excuse me, a cap GPA, do they cap the number of students who are going to receive that scholarship regardless? You know, so for example, would a kid with a 3.5 who applied to a rolling admission WUE school on November 15th maybe not get it versus someone who applied on September 15th just because perhaps the funds ran out? I don't know. Does that vary by school, Jasmine?
It really does. And I can even give you an example. At the University of Utah, about 5 years ago, we only gave out a total of 200 WUE scholarships. That was it.
wow.
And that was not even for entering first year students. That was total. So entering, there would only be about 50 spots available.
Wow.
Then we tried opening it up. I think it was California, Washington, and then we really opened it up. So we do not have a cap. Everyone just has to meet the deadline.
That's
So
fantastic.
schools can change their policies. We've really loved being able to open up and who gets the WUE. But sometimes I'll say, oh my, I'll hear from a student, they'll say, my older brother couldn't get it. It was really competitive. And so schools couldn't change their policies. But you are correct, Michelle. Some schools will place a cap. They might be looking at when you applied, but they might have other reasons too that
I
they
have
might
another
change.
question. If a student is awarded a different merit scholarship from the WUE school, would they be able to stack it?
That varies from school to school. We don't stack much with WUE. Yes, it depends. Uh, so yes, it just really depends on the school. Some schools might have a scholarship that stacks, but that's where you've got to talk to each individual school.
I think a lot of the WUE schools give the WUE sort of instead of a merit scholarship. Like Colorado State, you either get one or the other. They used to have this nice little chart where if you had this score and this GPA, this was the scholarship that you would get. So it's definitely I mean, my experience is it's been a school by school situation. And it's okay to call and talk to either the financial aid office or the scholarship office, or your admissions person. Most of these universities have sort of divided up their admission office by region, right? So there's a human being in each office who's responsible for reading the area where you live, no matter where you live. I just wanted to throw one more time. I just want to show the WUE website and show you. Now, I happen to live in California, but I work with a lot of students who don't live in California, who live in the West, right? And Michelle, you live in Seattle. So a lot of your students are interested in coming to California. So the question is, do the UCs participate and do the Cal States participate? So I chose just California, and you can see that there's 16 of the UC and Cal State campuses. So you've got a whole bunch of Cal States here. You will not find some of the more popular campuses, right?
And
There's
just UC Merced.
And there's UC Merced. And is it for all? It looks like it's for all the majors. So that's pretty cool. And UC Merced is pretty awesome, right? It's the newest of the UCs. It's got the most modern buildings. It's a beautiful campus. You've got Cal State Northridge, which has an amazing business program, amazing film program. You've got Sonoma State, which is lovely, right on the coast. You won't find San Diego State. You won't find Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. And those are like the most popular of the Cal State campuses that out-of-state kids want to attend. Humboldt is now actually a Cal Poly, so hopefully next year this will change and say Cal Poly Humboldt. But I just want people to see who does and who doesn't participate.
I did want to mention a few other issues. Some schools might have a separate application, so check with each school.
Right.
The U doesn't, but there can be. They also might give it to freshmen and not transfers.
Okay.
So that's something to check with each school about their rules.
So this doesn't usually apply to our undergraduate students that we work with. What about graduate students? Are they eligible for WUE?
Good question.
That is a good question. It's not where so the two WUE schools where I worked at has not been eligible. I can't say that there's no one that does. We might need to look at all 160. Evelyn, I don't know if you're still on the Finder, if you can try and see, do any show up? Graduate?
Yeah, you
I
know
know
what?
there are some 2-year colleges, so it's not just
There-
4-year.
Yeah, a
Mhm.
lot of 2-year. You know what? Actually, graduate is not a choice. The choices are 2-year degree, 4-year degree, certificate.
There
So,
you go.
but
Good
I feel like
question.
I've seen on some websites that there are some graduate level discounts. It might not fall into exactly the same category as WUE as far as the price discount that you get.
Sometimes there are neighboring state policies, but it
Yeah,
doesn't can't
yeah.
be a WUE.
Do some states require, or some institutions require the test scores for the WUE scholarship? Do
Oh,
you
that's a
happen to
great
know?
question.
No, that definitely previously before COVID. Since COVID, it's really each individual school. So
Okay.
I can't even tell you a school that I know because most schools in the West are not requiring test scores
Right.
at all for admission or for
Okay,
scholarships.
so-
But that's, that's a moving target. As some schools change their mind and require it for admission, then maybe they will. So that's another good question for each different office. But frankly, I don't know of one that is.
I worked with a student a couple of years ago, and he was looking at colleges in Idaho.
Mm.
And I remember, I'm going to see if their cost of attendance will pull up for me. I remember that the price for the WUE price for the University of Idaho ended up being less than even a Cal State for an in-state student. So I can't pull it up fast enough, but it's really, if you are looking for, return on your investment, if you are really looking for a value for your college dollars, the WUE program is really an amazing way to go, no matter which of the Western states you live in. Again, people just assume that they want to stay in their home state for college because it's cheaper. That's what we hear all the time, and it's honestly not always. So, be willing to sort of look beyond what you think, because there's a lot of great deals out there.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, thank you, Jasmine, for giving us this sort of deep dive into WUE. Do you want to give us a quick 2 minutes on the University of Utah? What do you guys do really well?
Oh.
What should we be sending our students there for?
Oh, sure. So the University of Utah is a public flagship tier 1 research university. I'm actually regional. I'm based in California. So I'll tell my California students, the UCs are tier 1, but our CSU system is not. So we have the highest level of research on our campus. Of course, wonderful academics, but it's our location that makes us stand out. We are within 45 minutes of 7 world-class ski resorts. We hosted the Olympics in Salt Lake. At the same time, though, we're not out in the boonies. We are in Salt Lake City. We are 20 minutes from the airport. We're 10 minutes from downtown. So lots of great opportunities for internships. Some particularly strong programs, business. There's an opportunity for business scholars. You get to learn about all the different areas of business before you decide on the one on which you'd like to focus. They meet with CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. They travel to national headquarters. And the global program gets to take 2 international trips. I'm always so jealous. They went to Paris last spring, which I think sounds amazing. Lots of students thinking about entrepreneurship think about the U. Also, the health fields. We've been ranked in the top 10 in the nation for the past 10 years for health centers. We also have game design, which can be a little bit more unique. Ranked in the top 10 for game design. Lots of engineering. And yet, we're most highly ranked, I believe, in ballet. So lots of the performing arts as well. So it's a nice variety. I think that's one of the nice parts about going to a public flagship. Lots of different opportunities. And we come pretty comparable to your probably in-state tuition with our tuition, room, and board when you get the WUE scholarship.
Do you
Yep.
happen to know the ratio of in-state to out-of-state?
We're looking at about 40% of our students are from out of state.
That's great.
And we are on I think it's a US News Report. We are on the national ranking. And I think we're like number 99 for nationally.
It looks like you're about 20,000 students, so you're sort of on the small side of large, and on the large side is
Yeah, it's about 24,000 undergrads, about 36,000 with grads.
fabulous. Well, thank you so much, and thanks for the information.